All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this lecture on the War of 1812. I hope to make these quick. We'll see if I can do that. So the War of 1812. As we look at the War of 1812, the big effect of the War of 1812 wasn't a whole lot. Into the Federalist Party, probably the biggest, although the Federalist Party was on its way out. We'll see that a little later with the era of good feelings. And then also it brought to light Andrew Jackson as a hero. Now, the causes. We get into the causes, and specifically, we've been dealing with our relationships with the British and France. I mean, going back to George Washington with the Proclamation of Neutrality, John Adams with the XYZ affair. Trade was the biggest issue. Okay, the Napoleonic Wars really get this kicked off and started in 1803. Remember who's president? Jefferson. Okay, it's his first administration elected in the Revolution of 1800, and so he is between kind of a rock and a hard spot. He is also diplomatic. He's cut the military, he's cut spending, and so he's really going to try to broker terms diplomatically. But things get a little uneasy because both Britain and France wanted to prevent the U.S. from trading with the other, and also wanted to prevent other nations from trading with the enemy as well. And it gets going with Napoleon's continental system. Basically, he told all continental Europe, which he controlled most of, that they shouldn't trade with Britain. Britain's response to that was to say that any ship going to continental Europe had to stop in Great Britain first, or it was willing to be seized. France countered that with, if any ship stopped in Great Britain before coming to Europe, it would be seized. So you have these U.S. merchants, which, I mean, economic stability was based on trading with these nations, and if they did what France told them to do, their ships would be seized. And if they did what Great Britain told them to do, their ships would be seized. So we don't really have a good answer or solution for U.S. trading. And it all comes to an boil with this idea of impressment. And this is going to be the biggest issue. Impressment is basically impressing U.S. sailors on ships going aboard and taking them to be a part of Her Majesty's Navy or His Majesty's Navy. That is going to continue, and both France and Great Britain are doing that. But then Great Britain, there's this Chesapeake Leopard incident. I put the names just so I knew what side was what. Leopard stopped the U.S. ship Chesapeake and was going to impress sailors. The captain of Chesapeake says, "No way, Jose," as Poppy would say, and the Leopard opens up fire. Jefferson wants, there's calls to go to war, but Jefferson kind of holds off, says we need an apology. We get that, but Great Britain says they're not going to stop impressment. So Jefferson is going to try diplomatic means through embargoes. The first is the Embargo Act of 1807, basically closes off all trading, all ports in the United States, basically going to make a hard line saying that the U.S. not trading with Great Britain and France are going to hurt their economy so much that they'll give in. This is not the case. It's an epic fail, big L, because it hurts the American economy more, not Great Britain or France. We'll kind of have a lot of lost jobs. It will really hurt the United States. And so right before he leaves office, he's not reelected in 1808 because he served his 2 terms. We'll get the Non-Intercourse Act. This will say that we can trade with nations not named Britain or France, although all you have to do is say, hey, we're leaving the port to go trade with this other country and then go to France. So smuggling will come about. But really, we're not going to trade with Great Britain or France until one of them says we're going to stop doing what we're going to do. This doesn't work. And so we try something else. Okay, we're going to try Macon's Bill number 2, saying that, hey, if we're going to open up trading to both countries, the first nation that says they'll agree to our terms, we'll put an embargo on the other one. Napoleon jumps on this. So France comes in, says, hey, we'll do this. We'll listen to what you need us to do, and we're going to put an embargo on Great Britain, which, what do you think happens? Makes Great Britain really mad. Okay, this idea of westward expansion also added or stoked the flames for this cry to war. So we have impressment, the inability to trade with either nation, and then westward expansion. There's many in Congress at the time, or in the nation for that fact, that the Louisiana Purchase, doubling our nation, wasn't enough, and so we looked to add even more land, and specifically we looked north to Canada, but then we also looked south to Spanish Florida. We wanted to take this over. But if we think about these conflict with the native population, what happened was, interesting enough, Governor William Henry Harrison of Ohio right now, who will become our president, got three chiefs drunk and had them sign over 3 million acres. Didn't set well with the other Native American tribes, and they're going to start forging alliances with Britain or Canada. Okay, and one of these guys is going to be Tecumseh. Okay, and we're going to get the Tecumseh Confederacy. It's going to be a bloody war. Both sides are going to lose numerous, although the Native Americans will retreat at the Battle of Tippecanoe. The Battle of Tippecanoe, okay? But the Americans felt that the British were trying to destroy us by using Native Americans. And so the only solution was to drive them out. And so basically we're going to get these congressmen led by Henry Clay wanting to take over Canada. And in the matter, why not take over Spain as well, or Spanish Florida, I should say. And so we're going to get this idea that both areas with their Native American populations are a threat to white settlers. The British are helping the Native Americans in the north. We might as well take both of them. Lastly, one of the biggest pushes, and probably because Madison, who was president in 1808, wisely tells Congress that it is your job to declare war under the Constitution, so you do this. He did believe we needed to go to war, but he also knew that him making that decision probably wasn't the best for the Democratic Republican Party. But he had a group of people or individuals called the War Hawks. Okay, these were congressmen eager for war. They were young congressmen, and so they were very idealistic. They wanted Western expansion. They saw what Great Britain was doing, especially with impressment, was wrong. Led by a gentleman named Henry Clay. You need to know Henry Clay's name. He's going to be in Congress for a very long time, be very influential. You also need to know John C. Calhoun from South Carolina. So these guys are war hawks. And so they help Madison. Madison basically says, hey, Congress, you decide if we're going to go to war against Great Britain. They're impressing our sailors. We've tried embargoes, diplomatic terms, hasn't worked. France has agreed. Britain has not. And so thus, they're using Native Americans against us. We need to go to war. And so on June 18th, 1812, Madison declares war. So causes impressment, and in our results of embargoes not working, westward expansion, and the idea that Native Americans were fighting with Great Britain, and then these congressmen or war hawks who were all about war. Okay, the War of 1812 did not was very insignificant in the sense of fighting. Maybe it's because the United States would like to forget they fought this war. We were incompetent, not well trained, disorganized. You say it, name it. It was bad. The only person that saved us was Andrew Jackson with his heroic efforts in New Orleans, which was after the war, and Perry on the seas of Lake Erie. He defeated the British Navy forces there. But other than that, not good at all. And so we had some early success in the Northwest. When I say Northwest, it's the old Northwest. And so we decided to invade Canada. Didn't go very well, although we did weaken Native Americans up there, which will help us with westward expansion later. Perry does get some early success on Lake Erie, but the British Navy is able to keep the U.S. Navy in port. They're able to blockade the coast, severely hurting U.S. economic, the U.S. economy, and really they invade Washington, D.C., burn the White House. Not a huge deal, beside it being our capital, which is still super young after we won our independence. So this is a pride check. They go into Baltimore. Now remember, it is at Baltimore where we get our famous Francis Scott Key writing the Star Spangled Banner. It wasn't during the American Revolutionary War. It was actually during the War of 1812. But really, not a whole lot happens. Napoleon gets defeated, so British can focus their attention on us, which is not good. The only star here or shining light is Andrew Jackson in the South. He defeated the Creek, especially the Native Americans down there in 1812. But more importantly, Battle of New Orleans, he's basically able to win that battle, and it will be kind of the rallying cry that we won the war. Even though this was fought after the Treaty of Ghent, which ended the War of 1812, was signed. But this is going to be a huge W for the United States, and it's going to make Andrew Jackson famous. So maybe that's the biggest thing that came out of the War of 1812. We know who Andrew Jackson is. Now, the Treaty of Ghent, signed in 1812, doesn't do what we really needed it to do. We really needed it, obviously it ended fighting, yay, but we needed it to renounce or denounce impressment by Great Britain. They did not do this. So, why we were fighting the war one of the major reasons didn't stop. We didn't get Canada, which is probably a good thing. Okay, shout out to Wyatt. He can still be Canadian instead of a U.S. citizen living out. You think we'd still call it Canada if we had taken it over? Anyways, however, it did hurt Indian tribes east of the Mississippi, and they'll have a lot more difficulty resisting white expansion, and so we get this huge push as we go later in the 1800s. But it gave us a strong sense of nationalism. Don't really understand this because we didn't really win. But Andrew Jackson, man, he's a stud, and so people are super excited about him, especially after the Battle of New Orleans, and that seems as like it's a huge victory for us. Now, one of the big things that we will get the end of the Federalist Party with the Hartford Convention. New Englanders were really mad about the war because they need Great Britain for their shipping and their opposition to the war and the Democratic Republicans. Okay. So we get this, we get Daniel Webster. They talked about secession. Here again, remember we get the Virginia, Kentucky resolutions. That was our first idea of this inward nullification. Okay, then we get secession, that states could leave, but really falls short, especially after the victory at New Orleans. People weren't wanting to talk about this. The war was now over. If it continued, maybe, but this peace treaty destroyed Federalist hopes and thus the Federalist Party. So really that's the end. Not a whole lot to it necessarily fighting-wise, but the causes, the embargoes are good to know, but really ends the Federalist Party. Andrew Jackson becomes super huge and doesn't really solve any problems, especially with impressment with Britain. Have a wonderful evening.